Hey guys, um welcome to the new video on grooming. And on this video, like I promised you before, we're gonna make another haircut, which is gonna include like a more curly hair. It's basically how her hair looked like in the first and I think second also Avengers film. And for this one, like I told you, I'm gonna be using only one description, and that's gonna be my reference. So it's gonna be like a short curly hair, and again the same idea that I keep talking about again and again, which is basically trying your best to get the very first basic curves or guides to work perfectly in terms of shape and how it's like curling from the root to the tip, and then you can add more guides later. So I'm like rebuilding my guide from the guide tools to add more points to the guide so I can control the curliness and move it around. And the reason that I'm very slowly doing this is of course because I'm looking at the reference next to me in every step that I'm taking. And as you can see guys, like I keep looking at it from every different angle, hiding the scalps layer, so I can only see how the guide looks like on the head without anything on the way. Moving the guide around, I decided to make this one like the main guide where the parting is gonna happen. And again, like the way that I move it is using control while using the add new guide tool. And as you can see, like I'm basically like sculpting the guide and moving it around to make sure that I have the shape that I want. That's gonna be the main clump in the front. Now I'm adding another one. And then I will add, I think, more. I will rebuild the guides so that I can add more CV count to it, and this way I can move it around and shape it better. So again, very slowly looking at the reference from every angle, looking at how the guide looks like on my model from every angle. It's basically like if you're sculpting hair geometry in ZBrush. That's how I treat guides in Xgen or in grooming in general. You can see that I'm looking at the reference on the second screen. Now I'm gonna add another one. So I'm trying in the beginning to have some space between my guides. I'm gonna move them first. So yeah, so now like the reason that I made my second guide so close to the first one is because I want to get the main shape on front, which is for me the most important, and that's where most of the styling is happening, like the front. and that's where we're gonna look first. It's basically like when you're modeling and you're like taking care of eyes. That's because what you're gonna look at first when you see a portrait is gonna be eyes, and it's the same thing for grooming. So the haircut and how it looks like from front, that's gonna be the main focal point. It's not gonna be as important on the back or the sides. So I want to spend like a decent amount of time just making sure that the guides from front looks nice, and basically following the clumps that I see in my reference. And it's always more difficult when you are uh, looking at reference that's not consistent. So it's like every single image from the images that I have, the hair looks a little bit different. It's not like if you have like a scan and you can see the haircut from like every single angle and it's the same. That makes your life so much easier. But in this case, you have to improvise a little bit. So now I'm adding the second clump. So I'm treating my guides basically as clumps. So I'm looking at how the hair is clumping in my reference, and for every clump I add a guide and I shape it exactly as how the clump looks like in the reference. So that's why, guys, I was telling you that grooming needs a little bit of patience, and you have to spend some time with your guides and making sure that they look all right, shape them all right, have a decent distance between your guides, and make sure that the length between the guides like is gradual and it makes sense. So again, I'm just looking at one of the clumps and I'm imitating the shape of this clump from front, from side, from every single view. And of course, the most difficult kind of grooming is curly hair, especially if it was long. Like in this case, we have like short curly hair, which is not that difficult. But if you make like really long curly hair, then you're gonna spend some time. Rebuilding, shaping it around. That's basically the most important thing. And as we talked before, guys, I try in the beginning to limit the number of my guides. I don't go crazy, and then I can add like an in-between guides later. And it's gonna be very easy since it's gonna interpolate between the existing guides, like what happens now, like this guide. Just once I added it, interpolated between two existing guides. So back again to my main guides. And again, I'm treating my guides in terms of layers, like I told you guys in the previous video. So I have a layer that's like the one that's connecting from the roots of the scalp to the tip, and it's gonna be like the first layer, the one on the surface. And then I'm gonna add like a second and third layers in between, or should I say underneath. So in this stage, just take it easy, be patient, give it time, try to shape your guides, make them look interesting, but in the same time try to base it on uh, an existing realistic reference that you have next to you, so that the hair looks as realistic as possible. And like 90% of the success of your grooming is based on your guides. So not just, of course, the shaping of the guides, but also like I said before, like the distance between the guides and the and how gradual the length of the guides is. So sometimes this happens, like you can add a guide and then it grows inside instead of outside, so you have to rotate it outside. And as you can see, guys, like the same way that I add more CV counts when I want to shape my guides, the same way I also make it less if I feel like I can't move my guide around because it has a high count of CVs. So I make it less so it's easier to move it around, and then I rebuild it again and add more CVs when I start shaping it. So that's what I'm doing now, adding more CV count so I can shape the guide. A good thing that I do when I feel like the tip is doesn't have enough CV counts, I just normalize my guide. I don't add more CVs, and then it will try to add like it will rebuild, basically like rebuild the guide with the same CV count that you have, but then it will try to keep um, the same distance between all the CVs on the guide. So one thing that you might fall for is you might depend on repeating the same shape for the guides. But again, it's always better, especially for curly hair, it's always better if you try to like add a little bit of different shapes in every guide. Like for example here, the way that the guide is curling, I'm trying to make it a little bit different. Like one is curling up and one is curling down. It will make it look more natural. It will be more random. So again, every time I take some time off screen, then it's me checking the reference and looking at it from different angles. I think if I'm working like 5 hours on something, it's basically like 4 hours looking at reference and rotating the model around in viewport, and 1 hour of actual working. And I think it's so much better than just working these 5 hours without a vision. just following your imagination. And this video is sped up 2 times, so it took me like 2 hours to finish like the main haircut, and this is sped up 2 times, so it's 1 hour only. But grooming is a little bit like sculpting. Like the more time you add to it, the more defined and detailed it's gonna look like. So you can have something decent if you spend a couple of hours, but it will never be as good as if you spend like 1 week, 2 weeks grooming something. Now I'm working on the other side. I keep imagining the volume of the hair just from the guides. I still didn't preview the hair yet, just because I know how it's gonna look like just from looking at the guides. So yeah, a lot of normalize and rebuilding happening to the guides. That's one of the things that you keep doing whenever you work with long hair. Your guides are gonna start to be longer. It's gonna be crazy working with a higher count of CVs. So you're gonna be rebuilding and normalizing a lot. As you can see, like I'm trying to get the shape of the clump that I'm looking at in my reference, and at the same time I'm trying somehow to make it a little bit different in every guide, but at the same time trying to keep the silhouette of the haircut. Like if I'm looking at my guides as just one collective object, I'm trying to keep it all under the same silhouette. Of course, we're gonna end up painting some region maps, since we're using only one description. And actually, when I tried this method of working with one description and region maps, I liked it so much better. It looked more natural to me. The only way that I will show you later when I'm making the region map is, I think sometimes you will have to add more resolution to your region map, because sometimes it goes crazy, especially when you start clumping and adding clump modifiers. It might act weird if you don't have like high resolution in your region map, and that's something that I discovered while working with one description. So yeah, now looking at this, I'm happy with, like, I have now like my very first layer. I'm happy with that. And now it's time to like add my second layer, I think, which is gonna be like the guides underneath. Of course, I have to preview now the hair first, make sure that I have the basic shape. I'm adding more CV count to my hair so that it has a chance to follow the guides. I'm adding a clumping modifier based on guides, and this way I can see how my hair is following the guides. Of course it's going crazy because of the parting that I have, and I still don't have a region map, but of course I know that, so I don't care for now. And this is something that you might freak out of if you're like beginner with Xgen, especially with Xgen. There is a weird thing about Xgen that makes hair very difficult to follow the guides. It depends like extremely on the region map, and now I'm making a region map. So I start with a full red region map, and as you can see, the resolution that I was using, it was 25. I think I will end up making it like 200 or something crazy like that at the end, to get rid of the artifacts that was happening when I started like to add 3 clump modifiers or something like that. So I think I will work on the region map, or is it gonna be this density map first? So region map, yeah. So like you saw, I started with a solid red color, and now I'm gonna add like bluish color. So try to always use the colors that you have in the palette existing in Maya. That way, at least when you try to go back to any of the colors, it will be always easier to, you can just pick it up again. And I'm like trying to separate between the two regions. And I want to take this chance to tell you guys that one of the really most amazing sources for learning grooming, if you're really interested in grooming, is a Patreon from Tarkan Sarim. So try to look him up if you don't know him, and it's really worth it if you're interested in becoming a groomer, to go deeper into grooming. So it would be cool if you can join his Patreon. I'm now previewing all my other groom for the eyelashes, for the eyebrows, so that I can have like a general idea about how the groom looks like on the hair. And I'm gonna play around with the shader. So I started first trying to do like a default shader, a default Arnold shader, hair shader, but I think I wasn't happy with it. Yeah, I think that's the Arnold default shader, but then I think I will go with a normal physical hair shader, the standard one that comes with Xgen. Playing around with the copy effect to make the effect of the clumps stronger, but it wasn't good for me. I didn't like it because I'm starting to lose control over making my clumps to follow the guides exactly. And for me, that's the most amazing thing about working in Xgen Core, is that you can control how every clump work based on your guides. So I don't want to lose that by using the copy effect. So I think I will just not use it eventually. So yeah, a lot of experimenting, and I'm not worried at all about how it looks weird now, because in the back of my mind I tried this more than a couple of times, so I know how it's gonna look like once I add all the guides and once I add all the variations. So that's why I'm not worried. And I will start now to add like the second layer of my guides, which is gonna be, of course, underneath the first layer. But since we are working with like a curly, clumpy hair, so it's not gonna be the end of the world if there's gonna be like an intersection between the clumps, because that's basically what happens when the hair is clumping, when the hair is curly. So as you can see now, I made the copy effect down to 0. I'm not gonna use it. And of course, always remember guys, whenever you add more guides or new guides, you have to always go to your setup maps in the clumping modifier and regenerate your maps based on the guides, so that new guides affect the clumping. So that's the variation that I'm telling you about, that I'm trying to make it look a little bit different in every guide, because you will never have in real life two clumps that looks exactly the same. So again, normalize and rebuild. And as you can see now, like the roots of my guides, they start to be lower than the roots of the first layer, of course. And I'm sure that I'm gonna add like something in between also. And as you can see, that's what I'm telling you about, is that I have to go to my setup maps and then regenerate my my guides. And again, my first clumping is always based on guides, my first clumping modifier. If I'm making eyebrows or eyelashes, then I don't care about making it based on guides, because I will always have less guides than what I need to clump. So my first clumping doesn't have to be based on guides. Actually, it shouldn't be based on guides. I do it always like based on generation, like I assign a number and I generate based on that. But when I'm making long hair like this, then I try to make always my first clumping modifier to be based on guides, and I try to control the haircut by my guides, by shaping the guides. And that's a cool thing that you can do in your clumping modifier, is to take on the color preview, and then you can see each clump has a certain color, so that you can understand how the clump is moving around. And also, if you have like problems with some hair, you can see clearly which clump is causing this problem, and then you can see which guide is causing this problem. It's very helpful. And now, as you can see, it's very easy to add guides in between after we made the basic and the main shape. It's just gonna interpolate in between. So it's very important for me at the end to have an even distance between all my guides. So even when I'm adding guides and I don't care for now about the distance between them, I know that for sure when I'm like ending the shaping of the guides is that I will add more guides in between to keep the distance as even as possible. Because basically what happens is that this extra space of having no guides is gonna follow when you start clumping. It's gonna follow the nearest guide, so you will end up with a clump that has like a huge roots in between your clumps, and that's because there is a huge distance, there is a huge space next to it that doesn't have any guides in it. Updating, and as you can see, like the more guides you add, the better the hair is gonna follow the guides and it's gonna look good. And as you can see in the back here, this shows you what I was just talking about, is that your guides, your clumps are gonna be huge whenever there is less guides. And now I'm adding another region mask. So I think I was trying to repaint it. I wasn't happy with it. No, that's region mask, region map mask. So what I'm doing basically is that I'm masking the area where I don't want the parting to continue. So this means at the back of the head, it's there's not gonna be any parting. So you will see now when I preview. So you see, so now the parting is only from front to the middle, and then the back of the head won't have any parting, which is how it looks, how hair looks like in real life. Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. Save. Remember to always save when you're working with Xgen. So I, like every 10 minutes or 15 minutes maximum, I would just save. And I try to do this accumulate save so that I don't save over previous work, so I can go back to an earlier version. If anything goes rogue, I can just go back to an earlier version and work on it. Now I'm looking at the reference, and again I have the front part always in my mind. That's the most important part for me. So especially that I know that my end product is gonna end up being like I'm gonna render it as a frame basically. So that's why I'm also giving so much more attention to the front. But of course, when you groom in production, you have to like take care of groom from every single angle. But in the same time, it's gonna be so much easier since you're gonna always have reference and yeah, like plates from every single angle. So of course I know that I will eventually at the end add noise and cut modifiers, which is gonna give the hair more volume and make it look more natural. So again, I don't care. The only thing that I care about is that my hair is following the guides. So I see that there is one clump that the guide, the setup maps doesn't want to assign a guide for. So sometimes it's only you need to restart Maya, because I'm looking at this and I don't feel like there is any problem. So I'm moving it around and now it's working. So yeah, welcome to Xgen. And as you can see, the more guides, uh, the better the hair shape is gonna start to be, and less guides, it's gonna look horrible like what you see in the back. And you see this artifact happening is because of two things. First thing is that I still don't have a density mask. So what I do is that I always add a density mask and then I mask anywhere that doesn't have guides in it. And then the other thing is because my region map resolution is not high enough. So I will solve this eventually. And now it's very easy to control the volume of the hair by moving your guides around. And that's what I love about Core, Xgen Core. So there's also this guy called Jesus Fernandez, and he has a very cool. I think he also has a Patreon page, but I didn't see the content of it. But he has this really cool free videos on YouTube that I would suggest for any if you guys are again interested in grooming, especially if you're a beginner. It's really helpful. So try to watch them. He's like tackling everything and especially tackling the modifiers and talking about every single modifier. That's really helpful. So yeah, I would definitely advise you guys to watch these videos. And now it's time to reshape and reshape and reshape your guides until it makes sense and match the reference. So that's why I always talk about patience when it comes to grooming. I'm so lazy to work on the back now, but I will have to. So now I'm started again. Started finally to work on the back. Of course, try to never keep your guides intersecting with the scalp. As a matter of fact, try to keep it higher than the scalp as much as possible without ruining, of course, the haircut. And the crazy rotating around in viewport, looking at your reference. It just you don't feel like it's as boring when you're doing the work yourself. It's a little bit boring watching someone else do it, but when you're doing it you don't feel like you're rotating around the model that much. And as you can see now, guys, I'm like trying to keep the distance between the guides almost as even as possible. I'm trying to keep the how gradual the length between the guides is trying to be even. And at the same time shaping the guides to follow the reference. These three things are basically the key for grooming. That's when it comes to guides, of course. There is maps painting, there's modifiers, there's a lot of things that you have to take care of. So as you can see now, because I know that the hair is going to be more random, I'm trying to not keep my guides exactly on the same row and with the same even distance between every single guide like I was doing in the previous video, because I want to make it more natural and more random this time. So I'm trying as much as I can to make every single guide different than the one next to it. But at the same time, I always have the whole picture in my head, the whole, like the full silhouette of the full haircut. I always look at it and imagine uh, all the guides as just one big volume, one big shape. And we're gonna do this over 2 videos, like this haircut. So I think in this video it's gonna be mainly like blocking out the main guides and getting like the full shape of the guides, and then the next video it's gonna be more about detailing the hair and making it look as realistic as possible. So as you can see now, once we have enough guides, it starts to look nice. And now I can see that my clamps are acting weird. And again, it was mainly because of the resolution of my region map. But I think I will play around with other options before I end up discovering that it was the resolution of the map. But yeah, I'm trying to see my reference. It's still a little bit early, and looking at it, I'm changing my tip width from the clump scale, the ramp that you can see on the right, which is basically how that's what you should do. Like, I'm not sure, unless you're using like the character you're making using like a hair product, or it's the hair is wet and in this situation, then the hair is gonna end up with like a very thin tip on the clumps. But other than that, you should always make the tip a little bit wider on the clumps and not very thin or spiky. And as you can see, it makes it look more natural when you do it this way. So yeah, I was just trying to fill the area that was a little bit bald by moving the guide closer. And that's one thing that I like to do, is to curl the root of the guide to give the hair a little bit of volume. And I do that especially in the area close to the edge of the parting, and this way you won't see this bald area in the parting. And hair in general is always like starting like that. Like, I think all your guides should always have this kind of curling in the roots. Because hair never just like, it never grows from the root smoothly to the tip. It just has to start with like a thicker and stronger root, and then it gets thinner and weaker when it's going to the tip, and that's why you always end up with this curling out on the root of the guides, or of the clump if we were talking about hair. So it's starting to look a little bit decent. Of course, I know I'm just beginning. But at least now I know that once I start painting my maps, adding the modifiers, and playing around with the settings, I'm gonna end up with good hair. Like now I'm not worried about my guides, and that's the only thing that I care about in the beginning stage, which is basically having successful guides, rebuilding, this time less CV count because it's shorter guides. But still, even it's short guides, I'm still trying to shape it, make it look natural. Sometimes I would just like move all the guides around as one bunch of clumps. Updating my modifier. Yeah, that looks so much more decent now. All I care about now is how my hair is shaping with the guides. I don't care that it doesn't look like hair at all now. So I'm showing the scalp now. I think I'm gonna paint a density map. I don't know if I'm gonna paint a density map or I'm gonna refine the region map. So yeah, density mask. So again, give it the right name. Make sure that you're using right name conventions. I start with white, I save my map, and then I select a black color. Make sure that yeah, I don't care in this situation, but I use a constant mode, and then I paint black. Oh yeah, the pen pressure, the stylus pressure was on, so I made sure that it's off, and I'm starting again. So I'm painting black basically wherever I don't want hair to grow, and at the same time wherever I don't need the clumps to influence my hair. So yeah, just as simple as this. And again, I made the same mistake of not having enough distance in my scalp. That's why I think in next video, or I don't know, like if I fixed that without recording, that I ended up like you can add faces using this tool here. I think it's called appending faces or something like that, and then you can append extra faces, or unfortunately you would have to like save your guides as curves and then make a new scalp and then add these guides to it and start like everything that you see on your primitives menu, just copy and paste it to the new description. But yeah, usually most of the times the appending the extra faces works fine. So of course I blur between the black and the white in my density map, and this way you don't have this really harsh CG look-alike roots in your hair. And of course it will not show now, but I have that in mind for the future when I start detailing the hair. I'm just making it in advance. And as you can see, once I painted the density mask, like all the weird parts in the at the back of the head in the hair, now it's not existing anymore. Now it looks nicer. So that's one of the things that I knew, that once I paint this map it's gonna look better. And that's what I was telling you, is that when you make this like 1, 2, 5 or 10 times, or even like 100 times, if you're a groomer, then you're gonna be doing this every day. You will start to maybe like make all the grooming without even previewing the hair. You know from your maps and from the shapes of the guides how the hair is gonna look exactly like, without even previewing how your hair looks like. And that's how you get like really fast in grooming. It's all about experimenting. And as you can see, like the beauty of Xgen core, you can just play around with your guys, and then your clumping is gonna be, it's basically like you can sculpt every single clump. So of course save, and I'm gonna start to play around with some modifiers now. So I'm gonna add a cut, and when I add a cut for long hair, I try to make the random amounts like really high, so from 0 to 2. But if I'm making this for the eyebrows, then it's gonna be from 0 to 0.1 or 0 to 0.2. Looking at the hair, and then remember when I was telling you about curling the root of the guides to get rid of this balding effect in the center of the part. So I'm doing this now, and I'm gonna preview and see how it's gonna look like. I like to always have in my reference images from like with camera from below and the camera from top, and this way I can see the hair how it looks like from below, and you can see like the shape of the clumps, especially in front, like I was telling you. Yeah, like that, like how it looks like this. It can give you an idea about the volume of the clump. So updating looks better. Now I'm gonna create a width map, and it's very important, the width map, because it's always like, especially for the first line in your in the hair roots, it has to be really thin, and that's what I call the integration of the hair with the skin. And that's where most of the people who make groom that looks like CG is, because the integration is like really thick, so you have like a very big distinction between the hair and the skin, and you don't want to have that. So anyways, I start with a gray, and then I play around with the width ramp to get back to how wide the hair was before, and then I will start painting my map. So I have something like this now, and I'm gonna add more density. I think that was like too thin. I'm sure that I will end up making it thicker than this. This is very thin. Yeah, it's so thin that you can even like see the head geometry from the groom. So I think I will end up making it a little bit thicker. But yeah, again, like checking it from every single angle, moving them all around. So I'm playing with the clump scale, which I didn't like the results of. So I ended up adding more guides in the space that was a little bit empty between these guides, and I didn't like how it looked like in my groom. And then I will add this extra layer of guides in between. Which is again giving me control to uh, be able to reshape or shape the how the hair looks like, the hairstyle looks like more. It's always good to add more layers, more guides, but of course, like I was saying before, you should do that once you already have the shape of the haircut locked in. Going back to my region map and making sure that the region map is not crossing any of the new guides that I added. I don't care about the bags since I masked it anyway. I added a region mask to it. Yeah, and I think in this part is where I was like obsessed about repainting my region map, and that's something that we all end up doing sometimes, either when we are sculpting or texturing or grooming, is that sometimes you get obsessed about something and you try to make it look as how you're imagining it to be. So I'm adding white in the density mask to the roots of the guides that's on the edge. Again, the mistake of making my scalp not big enough. It's always better if you have extra faces that you're not gonna use. So much better than doing what I'm doing now. I really like every time I make a mistake is to keep it in the video so I can show you guys what you can do wrong and how much easier your life can be if you start making it better. So that looks so much better now. Yeah, and that's it, guys. So that's it for this video. And like I said, I will try to post the second video, which is gonna be the end of this haircut, um, like maybe tomorrow or the day after. So it's gonna be, of course, before the end of the month. So this way I will end up at least making everything related to Scarlett and everything that's gonna be related to her, like in terms of Lookdev. I'm sorry that I didn't include for two reasons. First of all is that on this project I am collaborating with another artist who's taking care of the Lookdev part, and then the second thing is because of the of me closing my Patreon page. So that's it for this video, and wait for the second video very soon. And I hope you guys learned as much as possible from these videos. At least I could help you to start learning about grooming more. So see you soon with the second video. Cheers.